There are 4 levels of value in the earth because every number has significance. 1 is the number of unity, the unity of God. 2 is the number of separation or holiness. 3 is the number of God. 4 is the number of the earth. 4 is the number of the earth. Why is 4 the number of the earth? Well, there are 4 directions on the earth: north, south, east, and west. There are 4 seasons: winter, spring, summer, and fall. The earth is round, they say. But we talk about the 4 corners of the earth. When was the last time you saw something round with 1 corner, let alone 4 corners? We talk about the 4 winds of the earth. Oftentimes when we find things that apply to the earth realm, they show up in 4s, right? There are 4 levels of value. There are 4 levels of teaching for 4 levels of learning. There are 4 levels of parenting for 4 levels of child development. What are the 4 levels of value? Well, the lowest level of value is implementation. Implementation. This is the lowest level. Then you got the next level. Then you have the next level. And then you have the highest level. So, implementation is the lowest level of value. If you make money on the implementation level, you make somewhere between minimum wage and $80,000 a year on the lowest level of value, implementation. You can't, there's a very, very low ceiling on the lowest level of value because wealth, okay, let me give this to you first. Wealth is a spiritual outcome. Poverty is always the result of spiritual warfare because Satan, the enemy, he cometh not but for to steal, to kill, and destroy. So lack is the result of Satan's interaction or effect on your life or my life, right? But before the serpent spoke to Adam and Eve, they lacked nothing except one thing. They only lacked one thing. And they were totally unaware of the thing they lacked because of all the abundance they had. They only lacked they only lacked approval to eat off of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That's the only thing they lacked. And they weren't even aware of that lack because they were so focused on all the abundance they had, that every tree of the garden that man has freely eat, that they were unaware of what was missing. By the way, that's called a lesson, right? What's it called? A lesson. And that's a lesson that can be a blessing. What's the lesson? The lesson is this: when you're focused on abundance, you're ignoring your lack. But when you're focused on lack, you're ignoring your abundance. So make sure you've got your attention in the right place, right? So the reason you can't make a lot of money on the implementation level is because you're using a limited resource. You're using your muscles over time. So you're working on something for so many dollars an hour. Muscles times time equals somewhere between minimum wage and $80,000 a year. Who makes $80,000 a year on the implementation level? Somebody works on a Rolls Royce, somebody works on a Bentley, somebody works on a Mercedes. They might be a mechanic making $80,000 a year. However, if you stay down here, this is your ceiling. 80,000 is your ceiling. Your floor is minimum wage. Well, if you move up to the next level, which is unification is you're going to make more money. How much are you going to make? You're going to make somewhere between $40,000 per year and $250,000. $250,000 a year. Okay, cool. Why? Because you're using a different resource. The resource you're using down here, muscles over time, or muscles times time. The resource you're using here is you're using your management skills times the people you manage. The more people you manage, more money you make. Okay, so you're making $40,000 a year if you're managing Taco Bell, $250,000 a year if you're managing a middle manager at Lockheed Martin, right? And so $250,000 a year is better than minimum wage. We can all agree to that. But it's still a level of stuckness involved in $250,000 a year, because $250,000 a year it's about $21,000 a month gross. Now, you don't want a whole month to go by and you only make $21,000, right? So how do I level up? Well, I level up by breaking through to the next level. Everything above that dotted line is where wealth is created. And so on this level, it's called communication. The resource you use on this level is your mouth. Caveat: you have to have a mouth. Congratulations, you phase 1 complete. but you have to learn how to use it, to have conversations that create cash flow, to develop messages that move the masses. When you do that on this level, the amount of wealth that you can create is somewhere on the low end, you're gonna make 100 grand a year. High end, you could make 100 million a year. So what communicators make 100,000? You might sell cars, make 100,000 a year. You might sell insurance and make somewhere between 300,000 a year and $1 million a year. Or you might be a communicator who's an A-list actor, and you might make 100 million a year. You might be an A-list singer, create 100 million a year, okay? And you're using your mouth. Here's one of the reasons so many people today are broke is because when you were a child, somebody taught you the erroneous lesson that children are to be seen and not heard. Sit still and be quiet. Communication. Nobody ever told you if you get really, really good at talking, you get really, really good at communicating, you can become influential, powerful, and wealthy. Nobody ever taught you that. Nobody ever said that to me when I was growing up. Okay? Now, when we get to the highest level is called imagination. Now, on this level, there are two things you use. You use your mind, or you use your money to make money on this level. This level, you make, on the low end, you're gonna make $1 million a year. Whoops. On the low end, you're gonna make $1 million a year. Top end, it's gone now to the place where we're at trillions. We have trillionaires now. Now, since you get to decide where you make money, it makes sense to decide if you desire to create wealth, you're gonna create way more wealth above the dotted line than you are below the dotted line. In fact, below the dotted line, you can create wealth, but you're gonna have to invest your way to wealth. But in that case, you're gonna go up to the imagination level anyway. Even if you make most of your money down here managing people for $250,000 a year, you're gonna take some of that money and you're gonna use your imagination and multiply that money, or become a better communicator. Maybe that's being a songwriter if you're good at writing songs. Maybe that's being a salesperson. Maybe that's being a podcaster. Maybe it's starting a YouTube channel. Maybe it's starting a newsletter. But you communicate some message to people that they value and are willing to pay for. Now, a lot of people find themselves in jobs where everything they're doing is down here. I'm gonna tell you how to get a raise. They hired you to do this. But if you start using this and this, you'll get promoted at your job. Why? Because it's just how God set up in the beginning. I know you're saying I've never seen this in Genesis chapter 1, but you will. So I'm going to tell you where it is in Genesis chapter 1, so you can start thinking about what I'm saying and stop thinking about that.